Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here. I feel strange being unmasked while the rest of you are masked, but I'll come back on soon. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce Mary King, Nadia, and Kasey, and we're going to go in order of last name, and I guess I'll come up in between. Does that sound okay to you guys? Okay, so I'll start with Mary Kim. Mary Kim Arnold is a poet, a writer, and artist. And her poetry collection, The Fish and the Dove, which is just out from Noemi Press, received a starred Publishers Weekly review, in which the reviewer notes, in this accomplished debut, Arnold interrogates identity and received modes of storytelling. I keep company with ghosts, her speaker declares. I prefer the dead to the living, grief the cave of wonders I've walled myself in. Arnold proves as self-aware as she is subtle, gesturing to the performative quality of her language and reminding the reader of its politically charged intent. This book is a rare achievement. The Fish and the Dove was also the March 2020 Rumpus Poetry Book Club selection. Mary King graduated with honors from Brown University and with a BA in English and American Literature. She went on to earn her MFA in creative writing from Brown in fiction. After more than a decade working in nonprofit administration, most notably as the executive director of the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, she attended Vermont College of Fine Arts and graduated with an MFA in poetry. She now teaches in the Nonfiction Writing Program at Brown and in the Newport MFA, a low residency graduate program at Salve Regina University. I know a few folks there. She's the recipient of a 2020 Howard Foundation Fellowship, the 2018 McCall Johnston Fellowship, and the 2017 Fellowship in Fiction from the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts. And she serves as a senior editor for collaborative and cross-disciplinary texts at Tupelo Quarterly. Adopted from Korea and raised in New York, Mary Kim lives in Rhode Island with her husband and children. Please welcome her.
Thank you so much for that very lovely introduction. I'm very happy to be here in an amazing bookstore in person for poetry events again. It's really wonderful to see your faces, and I'm very happy and honored to have been asked by Kasey to read tonight with you and with Nadia in the celebration of your books. Congratulations. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple poems from The Fish and the Dove, and let's see, I'm just going to so this book, I guess my little disclaimer about it is that it actually, I wrote a lot of it in the lead up to the 2016 election, and so it was very rage-filled summer, and I was thinking a lot about war and women and the ways that women could move around in the world, and so just state that I think that there is so you'll see some of that reflected. This first poem is called Self-Portrait as Cineremus. Had I been raised by doves, wouldn't I have learned to fly? By wolves to hunt in packs? Had I been raised by gods, wouldn't I too be godlike? In the movies, the orphan is the killer, not loved enough, not unwanted, but wasn't I most wanted? My mother, fish goddess, dove into the sea for the sin of loving a mortal man. I love a mortal man too. At night, I coax him from sleep, rousing him with my mouth. By day, we build high brick walls around us, our Babylon. Had my mother lived to see me rise from this boundless deep, would she recognize me as I have grown large and my arms have become the long arms of the sea, reaching over and over for the shore? A lot of this book came out of some research that I had done for my first book, which is more about my adoption from Korea and a failed search for my birth mother And so some of the legacy of the Korean War and that aftermath was part of what I was exploring. So some of these also have to do with that afterlife. This is called Legacy. It was not my choice to skin rabbits, to let their blood drain over me. This is something that nobles do, and I am descended from a long line of royalty. We fear no armies of men. Rabbit blood is warm and thin. I was fully clothed when I began the rabbit ritual, then disrobed in accordance with tradition. Rabbit slaughter naked in the dim light, white fur stained red, pale skin streaked red, red pools on the marble floors. I bathe in red. Did I mention that I am of the noble class? You probably have noticed this already. Wasn't I beautiful in my untouched youth before I bled? But now my hands, my hair, have you ever seen so much? You see, my father is ill. His heart is weak. I bring him tea he does not drink. I mash ripe figs with a spoon and press the thick paste to his lips. With the same spoon, I gouge out rabbit eyes and tell him, Father, they are all blind now. I show him the spoon, their eyes, my hands. He nods his head beneath its heavy crown. My father's bed is the altar where we gather, all the blind rabbits and me. We know the men are advancing. We can hear them sharpening steel. When they reach us, I will throw myself naked across the body of my dead father, and they will see us, and they will know from what nobility we have descended. No rabbits harmed, promise. This is a demilitarized zone. What rises against the sky, steel-girded, cocksure? What slices the gray air is government-sanctioned. The village is just a village, is just. We take the bus to the border. The tour guide hands out forms, and we sign them, promising not to point our cameras in the wrong direction. See, here is how you will recognize what side you are on. See, here is how you will know where you belong, as if history's frayed threads aren't unraveling, as if the ground beneath us isn't bones and blood. Who was taken during the war? Whose small bones? Who was not loyal enough? In the Battle of Wales, the backs of shrimp are broken. Later, an armed guard boards our bus and seizes our cameras, film in black ribbons unspooling at his feet. Image of a woman's face, image of corded telephone and fax machine, image of an armed guard boarding our bus. The tour guide says they are only trying to protect us as we idle on the bridge of no return, but we are not asking for much. What I mean is mother tongue and father country. What I mean is let us finish what they started. This is one of the angry poems, I guess. It's very fun to read though. It's called In the City of Men. For a time I worked in the building adorned with the head of a man. Let's call it the man's head building. And everywhere in the building one could not escape the heads of men. Men in the elevators, men in the hallways, men in the cafe taking up chairs, men carrying newspapers and briefcases, carrying cups of coffee and soda, men laughing, men shouting, men gesturing with their hands, men in the conference room, men blocking entryways, men at the refrigerator letting the door hang open. Men took their time. One cornered me in the file closet and said, "Oh, you know you want it." One said, "Hey, get me a coffee." And when I glared at him, he said, "I forgot there was a war against men." One said, "Ni hao, wonton soup, egg foo young." One said, "No ticky, no shirty." One said, "Want to take you shopping for a two-piece." One said, "Come with me on my boat." One said, "I'll bet you're great in the sack." Another one agreed. One told me he had been to Korea, said, "You don't know how good you've got it here." He shook his head at me, then turned away. "They don't treat women so good there," he said. So Semiramis, who was one of the sort of inspiring people for this book, I came across her, an ancient Assyrian warrior, ruler, and there's a lot of mythology around her too, so it wasn't always clear what was exaggeration and myth and what was historically accurate. But one of the things that I was really moved by was that she was supposedly this orphan and had been raised by doves, obviously myth, and the fact of the mythology that grew up around her seemed very much of a piece around having a woman in this role of military leadership and the sort of military accomplishments. This is called The Fish and the Dove, Semiramis cycle. The queen takes the throne by force. Ambition makes her beautiful, her sweat-soaked gown, blood on the tip of every sword. Usurper, pretender, imposter. The men whisper and hiss at her, but she has their eyes plucked out, gathers them up in her skirts the way she carried blueberries to her father as a child. Later, at the altar, she lays the silver bowl down, washes her hands in a basin of holy water, then tips it out on the stone floor, orders the sightless men to their knees to lap the water up. Defiling something is one way to make it yours. It is said that when she was young, she licked all the ripest fruits laid out on the table, and who would dare touch them after that? Semiramis was someone to write operas about. Imagine a woman wielding power. Imagine a woman on the ancient throne, beautiful and ruthless. If we are going to be ruled by a woman, at least let her be a whore. It turns them on to think of her, the historians, I mean. Year after year, one bloody battle after another. But what's this? A sexy lady coming down the annals of time. Is she beautiful? Yes. Is she wicked? Yes. Will she punish us for our wickedness? Yes, baby. Oh, yes. Power fits her differently than the men who came before. She wraps herself in the blood-soaked garments, prances around, but all the blood in the ocean will not bring her mother back. Semiramis stands barefoot in the throne room, trembling. She weeps now for the sightless men, weeps for her own father, his skin blackening where it was hung on a pillar at the entrance to the city. She has had her vengeance, has seen the children of her enemies boiled and burned, their splintered bones clogging the canals. But all the rotting skins, all the choked breath of her enemies, all the white ash littering the streets will not bring her father back. Has she been betrayed? Yes. Has she been cheated? Yes. Does she wish to rise from the ash of her dead parents and strike down every last living thing until it is only her own ragged breath she hears in the stillness? Yes, she wants that too. Men claim she is not fit for the throne, that her heart at times has been too tender. This is not a conviction widely held. Does she fear death? She does. Does she fear love? Do not cross her. Respect and admiration are not the same as fear, though their effects look the same in certain light. Standing where powerful men have stood before is powerful. clawing at the palace draperies with your own unwashed hands. If at the point of your spear men cultivate land for you, is the land yours? If it is their blood that soaks the earth, but by your hand that they bleed, does the earth too become yours? Her father slain, her mother left to throw herself to the sea. They say she killed 1,000 men. They say she loved 1,000 more, straddled and rode them to the gated walls of the city, urged them all in. Is love not a kind of battle? Is battle not a strike of love? If you can't control it, kill it, she has been known to say. Some say she slayed them all, so that none would mistake her body's hunger for more than what it was. A woman cannot afford affection when she has an empire to run. Don't say you have never used another for your pleasure. Don't say you have never wished it had all gone another way. So I'm just gonna, for the last piece, I'm just gonna switch gears entirely. And this is something relatively new. Just read a little piece of it. It's called Fantasia. Back in the 90s, if you could tie a cherry stem in your mouth, it meant you were good with your tongue, and everyone wanted a piece of that. Leaning languidly against the tall green lockers when he called me condescending, and I was like, do you even know what that word means? Later, he drives me to the party anywhere and runs his fingers through my hair while Wish You Were Here keeps playing on the radio like it's the only song there is. Downstairs in the carpeted basement, it's pitch dark and I can't tell where my body ends and someone else's begins, but upstairs it's too bright and too loud. I turn the corner and there's that boy, the one I have wanted for so long, but he doesn't even know. I try to bump into him like they do in the movies, but he just muscles past. He's headed to the kitchen where that girl, the one who drives the red Trans Am into the high school parking lot at night with her trunk full of vodka and wine coolers, is waving him over, and I feel like I want to die. I just want to die. Someone else is behind me now. It's the locker guy, and he's spinning me around and trying to kiss me on my mouth. I'm not really that into it, but it's late and I'm tired, so I let him. I just let him. Then later, after Everclear and blue Kool-Aid, after my face on the cold white tile, after he holds my hair back while I puke, after that party and then another, we're together that whole summer taking baths in my tub. At night it's so hot, we spray the bed sheets with water before we get in. We spray each other with water as cold as we can get it. It's fun for a while. We drink a lot and throw parties. We get high and dance. On the weekends we take up space at the diner and talk about all that shit that went down. We talk so loud we want everyone to hear us. We want everyone to know how fucking cool we are. Then that fall I bury my mother, and when people ask me how I am, I say, now I am walking in the shadow of death. And after a while they stop asking. Thank you.
Wonderful. Our next poet is Nadia Colburn. The poems in Nadia Colburn's book, The High Shelf, look outward from a point of quietude, a memory not quite shaped but felt, exquisitely collected like the elements of Joseph Cornell's artist boxes that form a central motif in the collection. But this is work that seeks connection, just as Colburn does herself in her poetry and meditation teaching that I have benefited from myself, and her social and environmental activism. Writing in Rattle, the poet Kasey Jueds says of the book, what do we not become? This question lies at the heart of The High Shelf, a book of trauma and healing, of pregnancy and mothering, of discovering happiness, even joy, in a threatened and suffering world. Nadia Colburn holds a PhD in English from Columbia University, where her studies were supported by a Mellon Fellowship and a Jacob Davitz Fellowship, and where she won the Bunner Prize for Best American Essay. She's also a certified Kundalini Yoga teacher and an Order of Interbeing aspirant in Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village tradition. Her writing has won numerous awards, including a PEN New England Discovery Award in Poetry, and has been published in the New Yorker, American Poetry Review, Boston Review, Kenyon Review, Harvard Review, Colorado Review, Denver Quarterly, and many other places. She's also a founding editor at the Spirituality and Social Justice magazine Anchor, published by Still Harbor.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's an honor to be introduced by you, and thank you, Mary Kim. It was so much fun to hear your poems, and thank you, Kasey. I'm excited to hear your poems and excited for your book in general. So I will just read some poems. So this is from The High Shelf, and I'll just begin kind of towards the beginning. The Natural World. It was like waking up one day, no longer able to carry a tune. The little chicks trailing behind their mother, searching for food. The hummingbird coming once, twice to the bougainvillea vine. The children in the water laughing, feeling the sun on their faces, their arms. The waves showing their white tips, claiming a space, becoming undone. 3 starfish lie on a blanket. Music from a boat that heads to the pleasure island charges the air and is changed. The beat louder, austere, words lost to the wind. Yes, certainly we will destroy ourselves. Reading the newspaper by the open window. The world that is alone in its beauty, with no consolation. The black walnut tree, the double oleander, the goats always hungry. Who hasn't been seduced? Who is the wonderful me of happiness, of forgetfulness, of horror that must be a part, as if all were a word in another language? Now no one speaks. So I wrote these poems, actually many of them, a very long time ago. It took me a while to figure out how they all fit together. And they're searching. They're definitely asking questions without kind of knowing where to find the answers. Namelessness. In the box I put the body. There were no words for what had happened. Outside all the other boxes. In some, no movement at all. In some, dancing. The color, like a deep blue lake, reflecting the color of sky. Who could say which was original, which the interior, which the exterior? Or like the color of the sky at dusk, opposite the setting sun, all silver, and the lake beneath all silver, as if something were about to happen, or had only just occurred. So, in this book, I was trying to take out as much as I could and try to get to that place of namelessness, what I couldn't name. But there's, I'll read the title poem. So it's called The High Shelf. And I had this feeling of suspension, not knowing what was holding us. If I can find the title poem. So it's called Explanation of the World. It was a shelf, a high shelf, and the boxes spaced just so, each one apart from the other. Where was the wall? Above firmaments, firmaments below. Where were the supports? The shelf decorated with little shells and trees and an orange circle, and from far off, the sound of the sea. So as Anna said, a lot of the poems were inspired by Joseph Cornell boxes. And I was going to originally have a Joseph Cornell box on the cover, but then that was feeling very kind of boxed in. So I decided to go for the sky instead, which I think a little bit charts the progression of where I got to after writing these poems, because in the explanation of the world, not having those supports felt very scary. And then I was like, got to a point where it's like, hey, the sky's really beautiful. The sky doesn't need any supports. It's okay. So, happiness. Wherever I looked, something opened. In the tree, a hole where the squirrel, all fall, brought its nuts. Amid the sidewalk, the little blades of grass, still strong after the first snow. Inside my house, there was my body, nestled by the bodies of the ones I loved. How had I arrived? This measurable space, the stairs so narrow that the bed frame needed to be sawed in half? Or in the dark, the inhalation, the exhalation of what, always escaping, always calling me back? It's true, we really did need to saw our bed into to get up our little narrow stairs. The open page. So this is a poem in many parts, but they're all very short. And as you'll see, it's about making art and about writing. 1. Imagine 3 lemons. Paint the lemons as many times as you can. 2. Lemon 1, the body. Lemon 2, the soul. Lemon 3, the intellect. Lemon 1, the soul. Lemon 2, the intellect. Lemon 3, the body. Lemon 1, the body. Lemon 2, the body. Lemon 3, 3. And yet the lemons are as they are, on a table, on a chair, or rolling one after another to the dirt-covered floor where a dog comes in and smells them. 4. What then is the limit? Perhaps one lemon is slightly smaller than the others, or one looks a bit like a lime, the tender green at its swollen center, and one perhaps the same, with a piece of its stem attached to itself, a little dark knob pointing out. 5. Then the fruit-bearing tree, and I reaching up to pluck the lemon from the fruit-bearing tree. Where is my youth? What, when I reach up, am I forgetting this time? The wind in the grass behind me, the staring, omnipotent sun. 6. And the urgency, the taste that makes the mouth pucker and then crave more. To have said that the self is multiple and complete. To paint as I might sit down beneath a tree, to see the self as distinct, a series of finite solutions to a problem. 7. A. Bring the brush to the page. B. Take the physical world. 8. Or any citrus, an orange, a grapefruit, or 3 smooth white eggs, the slight variation in the color of white, what is added to the absence. From such abundance, 3 objects small enough to hold, touch, carry them alone up the mountainside, and rest by the rocks, by the goats, feeling in your hand their own warmth. 9. Yet, how to show with this borrowed brush, this foreign viscous paint, the vigor, on the branch alive, growing, and then the object fully other, like a stone, carrying only the heat of something other, borrowed, not its own. 10. I trying to piece together some story, placing one lemon here, another. 11. Until it gets easier. I look away. Everything is distinct. The self falls out of the picture, and the lemon suspended in midair, with the hand elsewhere, and no floor and nothing to rest upon. Only from a distance, from far off, the scent of the lemon tree in bloom now, the small white blossoms, so many, one by one, opening to the bees. So, in this book is largely about pregnancy and creating new life and kind of the interplay between nothingness and being, namelessness and names, the matter and non-matter. So anyway, I wanted to just read a few new poems as well, or newer poems, if we're okay for time. And you'll hear, I think, that the voice is actually pretty different. I think in the beginning, in the book, I was trying to take things out, and in my newer work, I'm trying to take out the tension, actually, as much as I can, which is not complete. I don't think ever. Okay. Up flying. Whole flocks of geese in my childhood hunging their way north, the streets dirty with pigeons, the sky blackened by starlings, each small pointed wing so close to another's it was just a blur. Now, only sparrows in the thick shrub branches, thousands of them, so many more than us, twittering at daybreak. And yet, how many have been lost? Now, 3 billion birds are missing. We wake to so many forms of emptiness, so many forms of loss greet us in our sleep. In my childhood, I thought the world I had entered would be the world I would exit. And in the poplar, one grackle whistles, not to me. Okay, let me give you something a little easier. Again and again, I step out of my old clothes. I take them off like a child coming in from the cold into a warm house, throwing them in a wet pile on the floor. Again, I am opening the door. Again, unzipping my coat. Over and over, I must learn the same lessons, like late October piercing sleet that bends the birch, still heavy with leaves, almost to breaking. And again, I shake it off, stand in the light, here now, water dripping from my sleeves. Okay. This one's a little different, maybe. I was like, oh, these are all kind of darker. Well, that's just poetry, maybe. There's so many days when we're not writing poems. And then we go to poems when we have that little bit of darkness that we need to put on the page. So, with apologies. This is a little dark too, but. For 6 years, we took no precaution, and my body has made no baby. Nor did we plot to create another life, content to let nature do what it would do, which was, this morning, bring bright red blood to the toilet, so bright and sudden in its burst it seemed almost alive. And then a little plop. Child, we will never have. End of something. In the course I am taking, we are taught happiness is found in the deep I, in the consciousness of consciousness. But I resist. I want blood and bone, our son in my arms, our daughter's laugh, her wonder and unapologetic tears. I want relationship, the grass that grows no place but the earth, the stubbly green beneath our bare feet. When we ran on the lawn, the rich smell of dirt, the pebbles, the grit, those summers when we were all so much younger and didn't know that was heaven. So this, our children almost grown, must also be heaven, though we hardly know it now. Even so close to so many endings, to such changes we can hardly imagine, the ice even now melting at the poles, and see, these tiny red tomatoes at the end of the plants, little globes of the sun, offerings we pick and eat whole. And I'll read one more. Greeting poem to end. Oh, I'll read this one instead. Okay, today like yesterday. Today like yesterday and the day before, it's happening. It's so simple, I hardly need any language. Right there, through the window, in the trees, hardly visible, the birds are back and going about their own business. Do they remember their long journey, the tall glass buildings, the electrical poles, the wires? Are they singing for the ones who are absent, Are they, like me, singing to welcome in the dawn? While everyone else in my family is sleeping, the city is taken over by their song. And everything, bathed in the silver light of morning, is part of another story and its own. Thank you.
Wonderful, Nadia, thank you. Last but not least, Kasey Jueds. My glasses on. These are new pandemic, so like I'm not used to relying on them. Okay. Kasey Jueds begins her new book with the question, who keeps your secrets now? A question that, in combination with her title, The Thicket, immediately plunged me into childhood games of hide and seek and fort building in the woods. But the final word of that question, now, plunges us into the present moment. These secrets may have childhood roots, but they have grown up. This is a book, after all, in which we might glimpse a princess, Sleeping Beauty, only to have her remind us that her real name is Briar Rose, a name with thorns, a name that can draw blood. What then is the secret with which the thicket swells, James writes in Kenyon. The best I can do is to say that what expands inside Judd's new work is an irreducible reality, a sense that makes memory flicker, a knowing that underscores the distance between a word and what it calls or recalls. The thicket swells with feelings too pure to name. It swells with what it cannot explicate, with what it cannot contain in the vessel of its exquisite phrases. And to be clear, that is not remotely a failure. It is gorgeous. Kasey Jueds lives in the Catskill Mountains in New York. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in publications including American Poetry Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, Bennington Review, Cave Wall, Cincinnati Review, Colorado Review, Crazy Horse, Denver Quarterly, Salamander, and many more. She has been a resident at the Vermont Studio Center, the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Soapstone, and the UCross Foundation, and also a visiting poet at the University of Pennsylvania, LaSalle College, and the University of Northern Colorado. Her first book, Keeper, won the Agnes Lynch Sterrett Prize from the University of Pittsburgh Press, and Thicket is her second book.
Anna, that was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you. And it's an honor to read here. I have loved this bookstore for such a long time. And it's amazing to be able to read here. James, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for reading.
Thank you. And Nadia and Mary Kim, that was beautiful, and it's a total honor to read both of you, so thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for being here, too. It's really a gift, your presence. I'm really grateful. I'm going to start with the first poem that Anna referred to. It's called The Silo. Lots of these have their roots in Wisconsin, which is a place that I have a long history of. So, The Silo. Who keeps your secrets now? Now that the grain you kept to feed the winter herd is gone. The cows, long gone from the stalls, where not even their ghosts shift in the cold, sealed, dim, and imagined pasture. The metal rungs that climb your side start halfway up and hang useless, now that you are made of silence, of cinder blocks and circling air. Who calls the sparrows to cling to the rim of you and trace their momentary outlines against the flux of sky? Do you know that sometimes I hear my lover in another room and think for a moment, he is the one I told myself I loved before, the one who, little engine of the mind stuttering, little needle skipping against the record's black disc where it hits the scratched place, the damage, before someone lifts the player's arm and shifts it so the song can go on. Please tell me you remember the time my new love and I found our way through the wrecked barn's understory and unbolted the door that led to you. We could finally see inside to where animal skeletons gleamed in the circle of grass at your base. Not, of course, the cows, but wild things trapped, unable to scale your steep sides to the mute O far above, the open mouth muffled by cloud. Who could tell us how the animals came to die there, fell or strayed into something finished? Who could give us the story we thought we wanted to hear? And which one of us thought to call you ruined then? Which one to name you almost beautiful? This is a little poem called A Brief History of Silk. I gave the yellow skirt away, and now some other woman wears it. This mild February day, my body longs for spring. But I remember the skirt was heavy, made for winter, its color not of pollen, but closer to the street lamp that comes on just before night arrives entirely, when another life, in its wholeness, offers itself to be seen. Another somewhat wintry poem, and it's another Wisconsin poem. This is called Not All the Animals Sleep. There is always an away. We've abandoned the field to winter, and winter's trance of ice, hemmed by the wrecked wire fence whose rusted barbs can still snare skin, still claim a kind of edge. We've abandoned the house to the frozen air no one breathes, save the mice and the smallest insects lost to their dormancy. Now, when floorboards crackle and chime, it is not our feet forcing them to sing out. All around, the deer draw close to graze the blades of grass left sheltered near the wall's remnant warmth. They circle the house, drawing it into itself. They take what has always been theirs. Ladder of cloud climbing away from the clenched field, seed heads of weeds stamped against the snow like a long ago language. Long ago, and miles north of here, an island vanished, slipped back into the lake that birthed it. And long before that, a glacier birthed the lake. Receding, it left a hollow into which water found its way. Here and everywhere, the deer find what they can to eat, and some of them will starve. That island, how sudden or not, the blue took it back. That lake, the coldest and most remote. Here, when the snow recedes, I can imagine flowers might return, repeating yellow, yellow. But how not to count the days or hours till then? If you will draw near, if you will teach me, please teach me this. So there's a couple of little, I think of them as families of poems within this book, and there's a little family of litanies, and I thought I would read one of them. This is called Litany Easter. River of the flooded banks, of water muddied to mahogany like oversteeped tea. River where, come summer, my sister and I would float our child bodies over the deep place by the bend, reach our feet down to find the sandy bottom and fail. River fastened between banks by piles of shells the otters left, stellular, gleaming pale against the storm-flattened grass. River like a steeple intent on its elsewhere, river giving its name to the dead-end road, dividing what we thought we knew from what we never could. Riven, rising all March, and then Easter, when the sky held, the rains didn't come, and we were given the old story to hold on our tongues, the one of the stone rolled away from the tomb, and the woman who stayed to weep. Years later, a different version. When she finds him, she kisses his feet. Come summer, our own feet would blur to ghosts when we swam, blanched, then vanished into the river's dim. Not quite afraid, we'd draw our knees to our chests where breasts were beginning to rise, until we could see again what we half thought we'd lost, returned to us because we asked. But before then, it was Easter, too cold to surrender our bodies to water, and we did not know yet how to give away pieces of ourselves, how to play the old game of hide and hope to be found. I realized that it's a very Wisconsin book, like I said, but there is a Cambridge poem in here, and I wanted to read the Cambridge poem. Yeah, I'm not sure that there's anything else I need to say about it, except that this is a city that I really love, and have very strong, long-term feelings about. And this is called Self-Portrait as Lost Hearing. What I lost was smaller than a teaspoon, carved wood barely weighing, less than the lights stuttering out in storm, the waver of a branch after the wind lifts away. What I lost was petaled and scentless, shaped like a rose in a season without, a sometime knocking against one nameless bone in my neck. What I lost was one window in the miniature city, inked inside the book in cobalt and gilt. The sliver of a second when I thought the woman in the red coat stepping onto the bus was my dead friend. What I lost to wind, to mercury slipping toward zero, the brick sidewalks buckled by tree roots and lumpy as old promises. I didn't notice at first. It might have been hours until my fingers brushed the absence. It might have been years, for what I lost was not a threshold, not a hinge. I retraced my steps, crossed again the hunched little bridge, the iced-over river, where the geese made a cloister of their bodies as they huddled against the cold. I crossed from one city to another, but what I lost was never a border. It was a long fever of penitence, of trying to be good. No one could tell what I lost, as no one can say what the dog dreams when her paws shudder into sleep. What I lost was dreamlike, but it was not a dream. The houses all around me full and silent, gardens abiding their secrets behind hedges, where once or twice I caught a glimpse through gaps of private things, the arm of a lawn chair or shards of broken flower pot abandoned to snow. Finally, the houses fell away, a field then, and in its center, a sharp silhouette that made me startle, metal statue of a coyote meant to keep the geese away. For less than a second, I thought it was alive. For a moment, I forgot what I'd come back to find. Instead, that struck still outline of wildness I wanted to see breathing and real, the way during church as a child, my eyes always strayed to the stained glass wolf nestled in St. Francis's feet, the animal I believed in more than God. This is good. I will read two more. A slightly longer one and then a short one, which is the last one in the book. This is called Body of Water. Before the river folded over its otters, the lake with its drowned smell and its raft calling you toward it like a promise of August. Long before the one who rested his head in your lap and slept, you came to this town, its small pond trembling with koi. Sidewalks releasing the day's stunned heat, the trees bleeding their edges into dark. And behind storefront glass, the mannequins lit all night, silk and muslin falling slack from their hips into another way of saying, I want. What did it matter they had no hands, their solid bodies refusing the invisible work of spleen and heart, lungs and blood? You stood by the pond as the fish swarmed the banks, opening their mouths against the thin place where water collides with air. Sometimes you could hear from the music building nearby a student touching piano keys inside a room, petals of sound touching tentatively the place inside you where you could not say what was waiting. You waited where the gold and red bodies of the fish flashed inside the transparent body that held them. Inside the building, room after room, and inside one of these, music. What did it matter if the doors were closed? You had hands and blood to move them. Blood you still pictured as red like the fish that coiled in the body. You must know this by now. It is, as any water may show itself, blue. And then this is the last one. Thank you again all so much for being here. Yeah, this is the last poem of the book. It's called Night Journal. Asking and asking its solitary question, so close it might have been inside the room. For moments, or maybe hours, the bird was only sound. Like the baby inside the dream you woke from, crying behind a closed door, one of dozens that lined the long, white corridor. No, that was real, going to see the new doctor, who would listen a while to your weeping and prescribe pills. Whippoorwills are night jars. They sleep by day on the forest floor and recognize others of their kind by sound. For moments, how long, you stood in that hallway, how you couldn't not keep on living then, though the sobbing was bodiless and there were so many doors, and only one was the one you were meant to go through.
We have time for a few questions if anyone has any questions for the poets. Or not? See the chat.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you so much for attending, everybody. Let's give another round of applause to our poets. Another reading, it's an all-virtual reading this coming Saturday at noon with 2 German language poets. We hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you so much for attending, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Buy the books.
Yeah, books for sale. The poets will be signing books over here.